Well, hello friends, neighbors. John, your whiskey neighbor here. Welcome again to my deck. It's a little cooler, but still a good afternoon to think about some whiskey. I'm going to continue my mini series on differently finished whiskey. Stay with an American whiskey. We're going to look at a bourbon today that's been finished in sherry and French oak. So when we come back, I'll share some thoughts. We'll taste, we'll nose, and talk a bit about Oppidan. This is the Solera bourbon from Oppidan.
3, 4.
Thanks for staying with me. I don't even know if really that's how the distillery is pronounced, Oppidan. It's out of Illinois. And it is a bourbon. It's American whiskey, so this is a bourbon, which means it is at least 51% corn, and it has spent some time in new charred American oak. Some other things about this, though, the mash bill. When you go to their site, they'll talk about that there are 5 grains in there, and obviously corn, as I said, has to be over 51% to be a bourbon, and it's clearly labeled bourbon. But I know it also has some malted rye. Does it have some unmalted rye? I'll put it in the bottom. And it's got 2 styles of barley they're pretty excited about. That doesn't get me to 5, so there must be both malted and unmalted rye, and then the 2 styles of barley and corn. I think that's probably it, but I'll put it down below. Oh yeah, the rye, it's not malt, it's malted rye, and it's roasted, it's chocolate malted rye. Interesting. And what's also interesting about this small batch bourbon is it's using the Solera process. If you're newer to whiskey, or if you haven't reflected on Solera process, in essence, it's a process where some of the whiskey is retained batch over batch in usually large oak tubs or vats. In this case, I don't know if they're doing it in large tubs or vats. I think they might be keeping it back even in some of the barrels, because the way I understand it is, a portion of the bourbon is finished in new charred American oak, and then some of that is put into a French oak or an ex-sherry casking, and then when they drain the barrels out to make the small batch, they keep some liquid in the French oak and the ex-sherry casking, I believe, and that's the Solera part. So then they put in a fresher amount of bourbon, age it for some amount of time in those heavier casks, drain some of it out, and so on. And so the concept of a Solera process is you're always getting a little bit of the older batch, which is always aging in casks, or more commonly a large wooden vat. Anyways, I clearly don't know enough about this small craft distillery, but I did pick this up. This is batch 11, and it's released at 46%, and as I said, finished in French oak and Oloroso sherry casks. So let's go to some whiskey. Let's see how this, what's the nose on it, and it doesn't say, but being a bourbon, I'm confident it's natural color. Let's see what the nose is like and what the palate tells us. This is quite a spicy nose. Lots of dark cake spices come up pretty quick. Also has dark fruit, leathered fruits. There's a little sweetness, but yeah, a high sweetness, vanillas. But I think you really will pick up the dark leathered fruits and the spicing, the cake, cooking. I'm not cooking, but Christmas cake spices. See how it tastes. Cheers. Ooh, this bourbon is bold. Again, the first flavors I got were very dark fruits, leathered fruits, hints of tobacco, char, and then that's more of that spicing, a wood spice, tannic spice. A roasted quality comes up very quickly. better have another little sip. Yep. And the second sip takes it even further into those dark chocolate, little bit of roast coffee. No, a fair amount of roast. Whatever that is, that roasted malt, whether it's the roasted rye or I find French oak can be quite spicy and quite wood tannic, wood present. There's a lot of wood on this. The finish is very drying, parching, and leaves me with all of that rind and roast, and really kind of reminded like I've had an espresso without any kind of cream or like a dark roasted coffee. I don't know if the coffee notes, well, yeah, no, there are definite, whatever that is for you, coffee roast or dark chocolate or a little more aggressive oak. It's also pretty spicy and fairly bold and tastes a little bit young. Not too bad in the ethanol alcohol young, but in the aggressive nature of the whiskey. I like the nose though. It draws me in. You know, that leather dark fruits and then it's just a more suggested kind of chocolate note. I like the nose. The palate is very unique, and I think it will be an enjoyable or a really hate it kind of response to this. I'm okay with things that are very clearly designed to be spicy and bold, roast, and almost on that edge of bitter. Just like sometimes a really good strong coffee with no cream. And I generally like cream, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I can really appreciate that. And I can get that with this. But it is a very, well, maybe I'm overemphasizing. To me, it's quite a bold palate, quite a bold taste, and certainly would put off, I think, any, Irish, Scotch, like kind of a more relaxed approach. And for bourbon, it's quite a ways away from typical. I'm going to put it at about 3.5 stars, but I'm actually really glad I have it. And every now and then, I haven't been deep into it, but I've had it for quite a while. Every now and then, when you get that sense, you go to your bar or your shelf or your closet or whatever it is that you keep, your whiskeys, and you suddenly realize that most of these are kind of the same. And then, you see something like this, and this is very different. And it's nice to just pour a dram and kind of like in its own way, like this would be a dessert, not necessarily a compliment, but it would stand on its own as a dessert or an evening reflection. So even though I'm keeping it back at 3.5 stars, I'm very thankful that I have it. And if you like something really unique and different, I'd give it a try. Now, I thought I would compare it to Legion, which I just reviewed recently. Just because Legion is also a bourbon, it has also been finished in ex-sherry. Now, it doesn't have the French oak, and it doesn't have the roasted malt in the mash bill. It has California wine is finished as well as ex-sherry. In this sitting, in this comparison, the nose becomes extremely light. Far closer to typical bourbons. You got fruit in here, definitely, but now I can actually get some cooked sugars or caramels on the palate. And the palate, I think right away, okay, we're back into bourbon territory. They're both bourbons, but now I can get what I'm looking for in bourbons with that nice oak, but some cooked sugars and some caramels, vanillas, and then add some of the darker fruit. Coming quickly back to the Oppidan. Now, really the chocolate, the chocolate or coffee, but roasted nature is strong on the nose. And in comparison, present in the finish, and now has even become a little bit bitter. Actually, a fair amount bitter. Doesn't put me off yet bitter, but I think many people would really be aware of that roast. And then the spice from the French oak, it's very woody and drying. Interesting dram. I still like, especially if you're on a journey like me and you're looking for something kind of unique. I'm very glad I have it. But it would be tough. I'd like to pour a sip for you before I could really recommend, because I think for many people it's quite a ways from a standard bourbon palate. You guys have a great afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the week.